I did the math, doesn't allow Black college graduates to deduct all their interest in the early years because their debt is too great.
Wow.
So we see that, everybody says, or people think, oh, college is this great equalizer. Well, no, it isn't, because Black Americans experience college very different than their white peers. For the first, 60% of Black students who start college don't graduate. So most people leave college with debt, but no ability to get a better paying job to amortize that debt. And then over time, the debt grows, either because of income-based repayment, either because Black students are more likely to go to graduate school when we graduate. So we've got more debt that we are stacking on. And research shows even wealthy Black parents cannot protect their students from debt the way wealthy white parents can.
So there's a couple of things. So essentially, college is more expensive for Black people. It's basically just like that's it. I would imagine the incidence of graduate degrees is higher because Black people are more conscious of the headwinds that they're facing when they go into the career path, and so they feel that they need to have more bona fides to deal, and which I would imagine is also the case.
Absolutely.
And we should also say that the 529
yes
would also have the same effect, but on the front side, correct?
Yes. And you see more white Americans, an overwhelmingly amount of white Americans who have, or those who have 529s, and very few Black Americans can afford to put money away. Why? Because we're paying extra taxes. Why? Because we're sending home money to parents or siblings because of Jim Crow, because there's no safety net, because the wealth disparities prevent Black Americans from building wealth, much less handing it down. So you take two Black workers with the same income level, that's like suspend disbelief and, work with me on this hypo.
Right.
The Black worker has more demands on their dollars than the white worker, which is sending money to parents, whereas research shows white college graduates are more likely to get money from their parents and grandparents and use it for further wealth building.
And we should say that, let's talk about home ownership. And while we're there, we should say that that is where you see a tremendous, and if you expand it to just property in general, that's where you see really an extensive history of government and institutional racism that essentially it's the primary builder of intergenerational wealth.
Yes.
Is home ownership and property. And so that's the deficit that requires that creates more demand on those dollars of a Black worker contemporarily. But let's talk about home ownership in terms of from a tax standpoint.
Right.
And maybe we can touch on some of those other factors that have inhibited, because it's like a web, right? Well, it's a web, and there's a linear quality to this in that, people talk about the wonders of APR, right? Of interest rate that accrues, right. But there's a reverse impact too. And that's sort of what Black people have been caught up in, since, I guess including slavery, but certainly since, Reconstruction.
So with respect to home ownership, we allow a tax break if you sell your home for a gain. If you're married, up to $500,000 of your gain is tax free. If you're single, $250,000. If you sell your home at a loss, no tax deduction. Well, research shows the most gain is found in homogeneous white neighborhoods where most white homeowners live. Where are Black Americans most likely to live? Black homeowners are most likely to live in racially diverse or all Black neighborhoods. So if we sell for a gain, it's significantly less than if we were to buy in an all white neighborhood. And Black homeowners are most likely to sell for a non-deductible loss. So homeownership, which is valued by most homeowners, right? That's how the market works. And most homeowners are white. They don't want to live around too many Black neighbors, which means only one or two Black Americans can buy into a neighborhood in a all white neighborhood and get the wealth out of it that their white neighbors do. But it comes with, the possibility of your neighbors calling the cops on you. It comes with the possibility of if you have children in an all-white school district, you're going to have to fight with the teachers and principals who are going to racially profile your child. So it could be a good financial investment, but there's going to be a hassle or two that you're going to have to deal with. On the other hand, if you buy in a racially diverse or all Black neighborhood, you're going to see lots of people who look like you. You don't have to worry about your neighbors calling the cops. They know who you are. But you won't get out of your home what you would if you lived around more white Americans. So the tax subsidies in the 21st century are further subsidizing this racist housing market, right? You talked about the history, FHA loans, et cetera, that were barred to Black Americans. But here we have tax subsidies still supporting a racist housing market.
And I guess we should also say that that you get it on the capital gains tax that you're not actually making that money, and so you don't get that benefit of that free money that $250,000 or $500,000 tax free. I mean that's a lot. Depending on where we end up with the capital gains tax, I mean we're looking at $100,000 or more.
Yes, absolutely.
That you save, and then you just plow that into your next house, and the cycle continues. And then and we should also say that and I think you touched on this, but the propensity of white people to own houses because their parents sold their house that they were able to get a loan for at a massive, benefit. And maybe they gave some money to their kids, or the kids have it, or there's not the same ceiling in terms of getting jobs.
Grandma dies and they inherit the house. Yep.
And so, there's also the interest, there's the mortgage interest deduction.
Yes.
And I want to get to that because that's an issue, in terms of the SALT taxes. But generically speaking, if I'm paying $2,000 in a mortgage versus $2,000 in rent.
Yes.
I'm actually paying closer to it depends on what my income is, but I could be paying really $1,400 in rent or $1,800 in rent because I'm getting to deduct the interest on this loan.
That's right. So rent is not deductible. The majority of Blacks are renters. Mortgage interest is deductible. The majority of white Americans are homeowners. But I will say after the 2017 Tax Act, with the significant increase in the standard deduction, only about 1 in 10 Americans anymore itemize, period. It used to be a third. Now we're down to 1 in 10. Okay.
And so I should say, for years I was saying, our system benefits homeowners in a big way because of that mortgage interest deduction. And what I could have easily also said during that time was it benefits white people.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the point of that. Let's talk about children as well. And there may be a different dynamic now a little bit with,
the expanded child
COVID
care.
relief. Yes. But we don't know if that's going to be permanent. So let's talk about what it was 2 years ago.
Yes. So, for decades, we have had a child tax credit that treated children differently if your parents were poor. If your parents were eligible for the earned income tax credit, that household could not get a full child tax credit. And that's the way the law was designed. So with the Biden administration pushing for the expanded child tax credit such that every earned income tax credit household can now get the child tax credit. That's a huge move forward. It's a really big deal. It's temporary. I expect to see the Biden administration push for that to be permanent. And it's kind of miraculous, right? Because it was done,
right.
Part of COVID, with no argument. It was just done.
Very easy peasy.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about, and I just want to touch on one more silo before we talk about some of the proposals that are on the table right now. Everything around death and inheritance, the estate tax.
Yes.
I mentioned, I once had an interesting exchange with Donahue Peebles, who apparently is one of the richest black men in the country, according to Forbes. I was on a panel with him. I had no idea who he was. We were talking about the repeal of the inheritance tax,
right,
and the estate tax, and we got into an argument about it. And he said there's a reason why the Congressional Black Caucus supports it. It is to build black intergenerational wealth. And I was like, I feel like there's other ways of doing that except for just like your black intergenerational wealth.
Exactly.
But talk how that dynamic also favors, and I think it's quite obvious on some level from what you've said at this point, with this rubric. But explain.
Yes. So first of all, on the income tax side, you can give income to anyone and they get it tax free. So the payment that grandparent may pay, give their grandchild for college or anything else, gifts and inheritances are tax free on the income tax side. On the estate and gift tax side, now we've got like $23 million you can give without having to pay any taxes, which basically is almost everybody, but maybe 400 people, right? So It's a ridiculously high amount, but it's how intergenerational wealth is transferred and how tax law enables the white transmission of wealth. The exclusion or the ability to give or receive gifts tax-free dates back to 1913. So let's talk, right? 1913, who had wealth? We know who had wealth.
Right.
It wasn't people who looked like my ancestors, right? It was white people. So the provision was designed for white people to transfer wealth tax-free. And the estate tax now allows you to do it at death as well. So it's a double whammy. It's designed to help keep white wealth in the family, as it were. And I agree with your take that there may be a generation of black wealthy folks coming up, but they're the exception. We should not be making tax policy for a handful of black people. We should be making tax policy for the majority of black people.
Right, exactly. Let's tax the dollar that you give to your kids upon your death, and use that money to, if we want to provide tax cuts to people, do it to renters get
That's right.
There's easier ways of doing that. Well, not just easier. I mean,
fairer. I'll say
ways.
it.
Exactly. I was going to say, like, it's pretty easy for that guy.
Right.
So what, and I guess the first thing, and let's talk about some of these solutions, then we can maybe just assess one or two proposals that are out there right now. The first thing that we should do to fix this is to start recording racial data as a way, right? Because
yes,
then we can't hide in the way that guy on the panel wanted to hide.
Yes, exactly. Step one, we need the publication of data by race. And President Biden's executive order that he signed, his first executive order, talked about the disaggregation of data by race across government agencies. So there is a framework for this, but the problem is there is no one I see at Treasury who's competent to carry this out. So we've got the president at a high level saying, I want this done, but the appointees at Treasury have never written about race and tax. They are, in my opinion, clueless. So I am cautiously pessimistic about the ability of the administration to get it done, but there is a framework at least.
But how hard would that be at least to collect the data, right? Like, I mean, don't you just have to put on the form, what's your race?
I would say we don't want it on the form. because that could subject people to audits. That could subject people to other bad activity. The IRS has a statistics of income division, which